right, I've got 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. Let's have our call to order. Do a roll call. I'm here. Charlotte? Here. Bob?
Here.
Ann?
Here.
Tim?
Here.
Karen? Here. John?
Here.
Bernie's here. Andrew is online. And Mike is away. And Todd, are you here tonight? No, Todd. All right. Let's see. I don't think we have anyone online, so I'm going to just skip the spiel about Zoom participants for this evening. First order of business, item 1, the meeting minutes from our previous meeting, Tuesday, May 5th, 2026. Looking for a motion to approve those unless there's any addendums to those minutes.
Motion to approve.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. These are approved. Here for citizen comment?
No, I'm not gonna say
Okay. In that case, item 2, I don't believe we have any citizen comment. We have no one online. I guess we have an attendee.
Yeah, that's the only person online,
Okay.
but he doesn't have his hand up.
Okay. I guess I should read the thing if he's online. For the, I believe it was Dave, who's in the attendees, if you wish to comment during public comment, you can use the raise hand function. You can go ahead and do so now if you have any public comment to add. Otherwise, we'll move ahead. Okay. For the chairperson's report for this evening, item 3, I just wanted to voice my thanks for the discussion that was at the commission discussion session this week regarding the potential for the addition of a right-of-way manager. If you get a chance, go ahead and listen back to that when it gets posted on YouTube. It was a really, I think, productive and positive discussion. A lot of good that I think could come to this board by having that position. So I definitely wanted to just use this time to support that creation of that position and the roles that seem to be envisioned for it. All right, item 5, staff liaison report.
Yeah, so a couple things. The weather's been pretty good lately, so we've been getting a lot of pavement markings painted. Our staff has painted over 126 crosswalks and stop bars, 30 crosswalks, 84 stop bars since May 10th. We actually added, we had I think it was one of the public comments here, Oakway and Edward. We added the stop bars there to the 3-way intersection. Folks were running all 3 approaches to that intersection. And the person that requested that actually sent an email this week thanking us and said it's been a big improvement and it really made a difference. And I agree with him. I think those do. So we're trying to do as many of those as we can as we move through the community. Capital budget, I just wanted to mention, Mickey was good enough to print out last year's capital budget, so we have that sheet there. I think we need to talk about that tonight. We were given the task of starting the capital budget. We have 2 weeks to complete it and turn it in. Most of everything that we have with mobility was related to sidewalks and new sidewalk installation, so we're actually doing Greenhurst this year. And if you guys want to have a discussion when that item comes up with capital budget, then we can do that. But I just want to remind you guys that we have to submit that. So we will be required to have that in before the next meeting takes place. So kind of have to have that conversation this evening. And Mr. McGill, our manager, authorized me to order 2 pedestrian crossing warning devices. It's those plastic things on the rubber base that you place at the intersections approaching Kelso at Pembroke. So we're going to put 2 of those down there to try and improve visibility of that intersection and give that a shot. I ordered them. I actually called before the meeting to see where they're at. They said they're still in processing. There's only a handful of PennDOT approved vendors that supply those. And it's been, I think it's almost a month since I ordered them. And the lady that I talked to wasn't real sure what the status was. She's going to send me an email tomorrow. So those are in the works and we should have those on Kelso hopefully in the next couple of weeks. That's all I have.
Oh, did you say Pembroke or Kelso?
Pembroke and Kelso.
Pembroke
Kelso
and
at Pembroke.
Yeah, oh, awesome. Okay.
So
Where that crosswalk is, right?
Correct, yeah, where we added the crosswalk, where we updated the signs, that was late last year or summer
Yeah,
last year,
yeah.
yeah.
So was that, what budget was that part of? Or-
Yeah.
Whatever,
Public
just-
Works budget.
Oh, okay, cool.
I mean, it just, yeah, it was $725 for the two of them shipped, so.
Nice, okay.
On the live streaming, do we self-perform that in Mount Lebanon?
We do stop bars, crosswalks, pavement, school zones, directional arrows, all those type of things. The long lines, we outsource that. We don't have the equipment to do a double yellow and a single white, so
Gotcha.
it's not feasible
Doesn't make
for us to
sense.
do it, correct, yeah. It'd be really wavy if we did them, because we have a walk behind. So,
Hey, Rudy, what are those devices that you put on Kelso and Pembroke? Are they electric?
No, these are those rubber, plastic, they're about a foot wide, 18 inches wide by about 4 feet high, and they're on a rubber base. And they sit right in
yes.
the middle on a double yellow
Got it.
approaching. Like
Yeah.
Castle Shannon, I know, has them down on Mount Lebanon Boulevard at, I can never remember the name of that road. What is it?
Cook Lane?
Yeah, Cook Lane, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
sure.
We'll move on to, oh, I'm sorry, I completely skipped the commission liaison report. I'm sorry about that, Andrew.
No, that is quite all right, Sean, because you stole my thunder with the conversation about the right-of-way manager, and Rudy closed it out with the great news from the resident who expressed their appreciation for the stop bars, which was nice to see. Again, those were kind of the main things I wanted to pass along to everybody, that that the right-of-way manager conversation is going forward. Sean, like you, I am very excited by that possibility. Again, any time a municipality adds staff, it's challenging, right? And just put it into context, right? I mean, we hire someone, oh yeah, that's not that big of a deal, but it really is, because it's a expansion of long-term commitment that we are making to the community, right? It's not just this person that would be hired. It is this role that we would be expanding, and that is a long-term commitment, and it's a big step. And so the fact that this team have felt it appropriate to move this forward, I think, is a great step, and I'm really excited by it. I think it's that obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be worked through in terms of exactly what the role is and how it lays out. Again, I think as you would find if you listen to the discussion, I think there's some discussion between, is it more of a public works role or is it more of a planning role? I have my opinion, but again, ultimately, that is at the manager's discretion, and I would ultimately defer to the team to how that role gets kind of embedded into the organization and how it sits. But obviously, we are all very sensitive to kind of what that role would do for us, as the mobility board, and as we think about the utilization of the right of way, not just from a practical management perspective, but also from a strategic thinking perspective. How do we reimagine our streets is just as important as how do we keep up with all those darned contractors who want to tear up our street. They're both valid, right? And they're both things that we need to be thinking about. But as I'm sure you've all experienced in your professional careers, right? At some point, they say, hey, we're going to add a person that does X, and then everybody throws in a bunch of stuff onto X, and all of a sudden there's 4 jobs there for that one new role. And like all things, right? That's always a challenge that we need to be thinking about. But again, I think that the fact that we are having this conversation and that it is building momentum toward a possible budget line item for commission consideration in this next upcoming budget cycle is a huge win, in my opinion. And I definitely would encourage you all to watch that discussion. If you are so inclined, because I think it does speak to, not necessarily the grand visions of the future, but the practical realities of how local government does get moved forward, and how we build successes incrementally as a community. So I thought that was fantastic, Rudy. Thank you for your part in that and moving that forward. And yeah, things are otherwise moving along in the community. And the pool's open, if you didn't know.
We heard. Hey, Andrew and Rudy, I think that planner is a great addition in getting some teeth, but as you say, it's a long process. And given that this is just going into a budget cycle, when do you think there might be someone on board?
So generally speaking, and ultimately I would Rudy's lived it, so more than I have, but generally speaking, right, we would approve a budget that would start in the next calendar year, right? Because we're on a calendar year cycle here. And so then it would open up. So February, March, maybe this time next year, right?
Okay.
Just from a practical perspective.
Yeah, I was looking for a practical perspective. When can we start seeing some things? And then there's some onboarding and so on. But
right. Yeah,
that's
so
good.
I would say this time next year.
Yeah, great.
Andrew? All right. All right, we'll move on to the subcommittee reports. Capital budget we didn't meet this
No,
month.
we didn't meet, but it sounds like we need to have a meeting scheduled very soon.
Yeah, I think we'll talk capital budget in the new business section down below,
Okay.
so we'll hash
Sounds
that out
good.
down there.
Thanks, Sean.
Policy and street design, John, you want to give an update?
The Policy and Street Design Subcommittee met last week. It was sort of, I guess it was our inaugural meeting for this year with, I guess, a couple new members. We discussed several topics, probably the big one being the active transportation plan draft resolution, if that's what it's called. So we drilled down a little on some of those comments that have been going back and forth in SharePoint. We also briefly discussed the neighborhood traffic management policy and some other minor things such as we discussed the potentially having some sort of response mechanism for citizens' comments so that when people come here and make a comment that they know that it didn't just go to the trash can. Obviously when Rudy does something, there's a physical evidence that their comments were heard, but some of these other people, we were just discussing some ideas such as an email response or just a line item on the next meeting to discuss. It was pretty informal discussion at that point for a free form meeting with we did not have an agenda for last month. So yes, eventually we'll be discussing that active transportation plan draft resolution this meeting. So
Thank you, John. All right, we'll move on to the old business. First up there is the year-end report to commission. We introduced that or circulated that last month. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at it. I would like to move that forward. So if everyone's comfortable with it, I would be seeking a motion to approve that for submission.
So moved.
Thank you, Bob. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor of moving the year-end report as drafted onto staff and commission, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. All right, second item, the draft resolution that I kind of gave a presentation on last time around. Definitely got a ton of great comments in the brainstorming document, so thank you all for everyone that had a chance to take a look at that and add those there. As John mentioned, we did discuss it quite a bit in the policy and sub-design committee. I have made a few of the changes that were recommended there just to for anybody that hadn't looked at it within the last day or so. John, I did add a step in the section about the designation of the street topology and then the initial design options to have the include language similar to the exhibit you sent along forwarded today. So just a very brief mention of that, and I do want to talk about that in the new business section tonight. Give people a chance to look over that. But I did add a brief caveat about looking at the right sizing of roads in that section. Other than that, I have mostly the other big change I added was to the high injury network. Added a caveat that if there is a high injury or if there is an injury related crash, that the injury network be updated immediately in that event, and not wait for the 3-year refresh if there is an accident in that section. Otherwise, the 3-year refresh would go on. As I mentioned to people at the planning and design meeting, policy and design meeting this past week, the goal for this is to move it forward to staff so that they can take a look at this as a potential process. So it's not intended to be absolutely perfect. Obviously, staff is going to look at it and make the changes that they think are necessary. It's more of a, does this align with our feelings on what we would like to see? And that's kind of the overall push here. So I definitely wanted to open it up for any other questions that folks had on it. If you didn't get a chance to make a comment on the document, I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you might have. And if there are no questions, I would like to move it on to staff. So I would seek a motion to do so.
What would that mean again?
So basically, motion would be that the Mobility Board is recommending this resolution to staff for consideration for the commission.
Is that's that second document?
Yeah.
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 I will move to that description.
I'll second that.
All right. There's a motion and a second to move forward the draft Act of Transportation called the implementation resolution to staff so that they can take a look at it and potentially forward on to commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Rudy, I will get you copies of those. Do you prefer hard copy?
Digital is fine.
Okay. Do you have the links to them? I can email you the
Yeah,
links.
are they in the
They're in the
folder?
shared drive.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'll send you a link just in
Yeah,
case.
just to make sure is there only one in there? So
Yes.
no
Yeah, yeah.
confusing, okay.
Yeah. I'll actually clean it up and make it a PDF so it's a little easier to
Appreciate
consume.
it, thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. New business for this evening.
Can we go back to
Yes.
that? What are you guys expecting on the other end, just for us to look it over and?
Look it over, and if there's any feedback on it,
Concerns or-
concerns,
okay.
feedback, if it,
All right.
and then otherwise, I
Okay.
guess, start circulating with commission and see if
Okay.
they're on board with something similar. Yeah,
think
I assume
Ian will-
tweaks will need to be made, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think Ian will be the primary,
Yeah.
contact for that, so,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
understood, thank you.
And I suspect it will be, like, as it is, kind of the purpose of it is to go hand in hand with the active transportation plan. As the active transportation plan, I wouldn't expect it to go forward ahead of the active transportation plan. It would go
Okay.
at best in lockstep, if not a little bit behind.
Okay, understood.
Just for my learning on process, would it possibly be iterative, like where
It could be.
staff and the commissioners have comments and want
I'm
to
certainly,
circulate
yeah.
that back to
Yes,
us?
that would be,
Yeah.
that would be
Okay.
fine. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I did want to briefly touch on in new business, John's Exhibit B that he sent around earlier today. I do want to give everybody a chance to take a look at it. I had a chance to read through it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would maybe summarize and make sure I got it correct. It's basically a guide that when we are looking at reconstructing a street, we will look to potentially shrink the street to its minimum viable possible so that we can take advantage of things like additional sidewalks, bike lanes, tree strips, things of that nature. And also in the process, by narrowing the roads, that gives us a leg up on being able to reduce speeds on that road, both the statute speed limit, being able to lower that below the 25 miles an hour that the state mandates for that. So if it is engineered in such a way, we can again reduce speeds there. John, I'll give you the floor for a couple minutes just to kind of give a brief overview, but that was my takeaway.
When I drafted it, I didn't explicitly mention traffic calming too much, but basically what it does is it is basically a checklist that says, here is a bunch of things that we use our public rights of way for. Are we actually happy with the current allocation of space among these uses? So yeah, if you have a couple extra feet in your vehicular travel lanes that aren't strictly necessary, and your sidewalk doesn't have a planting strip or isn't ADA compliant, would you want to make those changes, or is your street built with like, do you have room? If you have room for parking, or is there like a mismatch between you have the sloped curbs versus in a location where the vertical curb would be more appropriate? There's some uses that take up a little more space that would be harder to fit in, but I did put, for completion's sake, I did put like bike lanes and handicap parking spaces in there, which, if you're not aware, those a full ADA compliant accessible van parking space is quite large compared to a typical on-street parking space. So yeah, it's a list of like someone. Ideally, it asks when you are reconstructing a street, or I also even put building a sidewalk, because I noticed that we some of these sidewalk projects, it's like, does it really, there's questions about where fitting the sidewalk in the right of way. It's like, well, does it need to go there? So the exact projects that would trigger this checklist would be up for debate, but if you're doing a street project that meets the criteria, you have to go through the checklist and say, like, do we want a planting strip here? And if you don't, then you have to say no, and then you have to explain why you don't think it's a good fit for that street. And you have to go through the whole list. It can't be just, it's fine the way it is. That you have to make a positive choice to say no to every single thing in the list, or yes to a couple, or say like, either of these two options would be good.
Yeah, so definitely take a look through it. We'll put it on for the for next meeting to discuss a little bit further. Just got it last night, I think. So definitely want to give people a time to look it over and add any comments. I will add it to the shared drive. If you're comfortable doing so, are you comfortable with just doing like select, highlight, and add comments directly in line of a copy of that, rather than having it like a separate discussion document?
In our recent SharePoint adventures, it was actually, it wasn't we had some comments in separate documents and some comments on the document. Just comments on the
Try
document.
and keep them on the document themselves. I think that tends to work a little bit better. You can see it right in line in the context of what you're commenting on. If anybody's not comfortable or familiar with how to do that, I'm happy to give you a little walkthrough after the meeting tonight. Okay, so yeah, I'll add that over there. Sorry, Bob, go ahead. You had a question?
Yeah, John, I'm sorry, I didn't see that document, but is it on the SharePoint now?
I emailed it to everybody. I didn't.
You had it like in the text of the email.
There was an attachment.
Oh, that's
an
right.
attachment.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Okay, I'll look again, but I did not see it.
Yes.
I like the concept of having something that's going to help implement active transportation plan steps. Is it consistent with the active transportation plan?
So obviously, it's quite, I tried to make it more general, but obviously like goals of sidewalk expansion, sidewalk improvement. If there were somewhere you could fit in a bike lane, obviously all of those street uses support active transportation. But I also just put stuff like street parking or, well, actually, the buffer strip is really interesting. The buffer planting strip is an interesting one because like it does a lot of things. Like you could be like if that exists, that's a plate. If that exists, people are more likely to put their trash can there instead of like blocking the sidewalk. So I've noticed that sidewalks that don't have one, a lot of times on trash day, there is no sidewalk. So, but I wrote that exhibit B to be very general as far as like any public right of way use.
Okay, thank you.
This is a proposed exhibit, I see it now, proposed exhibit to the active transportation plan.
To the resolution.
In
Yeah.
the resolution, okay.
Yeah, so we can take it a number of ways, like it seems like it fits there. There's also, we can supplement it in other ways, so how we actually pass it along is we can figure that out.
Because we just submitted
Yeah.
that to go to commission.
Yeah, but we can always append that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew.
I haven't looked at it yet. My suggestion would be separate content from process. Right, ultimately, right, we need to make sure that, the contents, right, may come and go through time. Right, and your recommendations around specific treatments and treatment options, I think are valid and should be considered. But those are going to be separate from the processes that we want to go through. So I would make sure that those things are distinct. Otherwise, you run the risk of someone saying, that doesn't make sense, so we're just going to take the whole thing off. So focus on where you're putting the content. And if you're saying it's a design treatment option that we want to have available, then it needs to recommend to be updated in that area, so to speak. So I would say the active transportation plan needs to be updated with regard to design of street options or whatever it might be. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater.
I wrote it as with the intent that it is part of the process. It's not. It doesn't try to push any particular street typology or present a street typology for design. It's like, here is a process that encourages a critical look at existing infrastructure to encourage changes to actually be made before stuff gets, because I was looking at the step in the resolution where it's like stuff comes to the mobility board for approval, and I was like, well, I don't want just a bunch of rebuild in kind coming to the mobility board. So it's like there needs to be a step in here to encourage someone to take a look at it and make tweaks to the existing right of way. And so that is what the intent does, and it is a process step.
Agreed. Okay, no, that's perfect. And again, for me, the thought has always been, right, well, especially with a right-of-way manager, right, again, plug that role again, is that ideally, right, we would be 3 or 4 years out from a road reconstruction project, and we would say, this street is up. Let's review what it is. Let's review what the typology is. Let's review what's possible on this street, regardless of what we want. It's not what we want, it's what is possible. And then potentially, right, have someone give a cursory like recommendation, bring in residents, right, tell them that, hey, this is a charrette for your street. What do you want? Here are things that are possible. Give them a few options, let them discuss, and then finalize through that process. Again, to your point, right, just reconstructing in kind is not what we want to do, but we also want to allow residents to engage and express that it is their street, right? In so much as they have flexibility to choose options, they should, but they should be able to understand that it's not just about speed bumps
right, and stop signs, right? There are other ways to think about streets. So how do we encourage that whole kind of, process and allow time for it to occur? So yeah, in so much as what you're pushing is going in that direction, I'm all for it.
Andrew, do you think that the active transportation plan fits squarely into content, or is it a combo?
It is a combination. And I think coming out of that, we will probably need, I think we're probably going to need to, go one level down, and separate those things out, right? And again, say, because when I step back and think about where the barriers are, in this process, right? Rudy's got snow plows that have got to go through a place, right? You've got sewers in certain places. You've got, access for fire trucks and on, right? There are uses that have to be taken into account that we need a process to go through, right? But at the same time, right, as we think about a residential street that is not an emergency route, that maybe it's a dead end. Guys, we don't have to, every street doesn't have to be 50 feet wide, right? With, so but it does have to achieve certain requirements. So how do we understand that framework going in? And therefore, as I think about it, it's the typology, then what is potentially allowed within that typology. Again, emergency route. In my mind, that's a simple example, but in my mind, that's the example of, look, we have to keep this open, right? Whether it's a snow route or it's ambulances. Lindendale, I live on it, right? So for me, that's an obvious one. I need that to be open and I need it to be accessible. And I can't narrow it. I can't make it a VONERF. I can't, do some of those treatments that Lakemont maybe can, or Austin could, or right, some of these other, more local residential streets could. How do we understand that utilization difference and the needs of that? And once that's framed in kind of as a typology structure, then what is possible within that typology becomes a Chinese menu, right? I don't know what people are going to want on their street, but hey, what is allowed? Right? Can you narrow it? Could it be one way? Could you, sure, right? In certain circumstances, yes. Should we is another question that I do believe personally residents should participate in. So how do you understand the building blocks of that, right? Part of it is, again, process, right? I mean, just what I've articulated right there is, I know Rudy's like, oh Lord, this is a pain in the butt. But at the same time, right, it's important, right? This is, again, these are our neighbors, these are our streets. We get the opportunity to participate in this process, and because we have ownership. So how do we allow for that? Because that is the democratic process at its truest sense, and facilitating that, I think, is important. But that's not a skill set that we inherently have right now. So that's a process design exercise that we've got to go through. But then to actually have a process that is healthy and robust and heaven forbid, relatively efficient, we also need to understand that typology very clearly and the components that can work on any typology very clearly, so that we're not getting into this debate of, well, I want a bicycle lane. Well, yeah, but you can't have a bicycle lane. Well, why not? Well, yeah, you got to kind of give guardrails while still creating, flexibility. If that's making sense, right? I'm trying to figure out how do we navigate between the extremes of no opinion and every opinion, and find that path where we can start building momentum that is encouraging and supporting and building a more fluid understanding of how we think about the right of way. that answer your question, or did I just like ramble on for 5 minutes? Yeah.
Well, to me, it sounds like John's document is trying to put process associated with some of the active transportation plan for what's happening with streets as they're being reconsidered. So process, I think, is, I'm hearing it, active transportation plan has a lot of content, and things like John's suggestion is more process oriented.
Love it. Awesome.
I guess I would say that I wrote that under the assumption, basically under the assumption that you want staff, for example, a right-of-way manager looking at things and coming up with some concepts instead, rather than like throwing it to the residents and asking them for like brainstorming. It's more.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it could get really exciting if we start brainstorming. But I think for me, at least for me, right? Yeah, yes. Obviously, staff are going to facilitate and kind of control the dialogue, but in so much as you can create options, right, and different ways for people to understand that there are different ways to think about it than just 50 feet of asphalt. I think is important. So how staff facilitate that, I think, is something that we have to encourage and support that journey. I personally would not want to say it is only options that staff provide. That for me is a extension of top-down control. I would rather say here are the options available. These are design elements that we have made available so that people do have an opportunity to say, I like this, I don't like that. Again, you buy a Ryan home, right? You don't get to pick, everything, but you do get to pick your countertops. You do get to pick, certain things, in the home. So how do we think about it in that way?
I'm good.
Appreciate the discussion. Thank you very much. I will, like I said, I will put that in the SharePoint. I'll email it around afterwards, and then if you just want to add any comments directly on the doc, we can go through those and discuss again next month. Thank you for bringing that up, John. All right, other new business, I definitely want to have time to talk about capital budget. Given the printout that we have, it looks like we're looking at, so I guess for 2027, which would be the next capital budget.
Correct. Everything bumps down and it creates a gap for 2031. So it's a 5-year projected capital budget, so.
I see, okay. So Lakemont is on the agenda for next year as proposed. What else is in, I'm new to this process, so I guess if you could give me a little, maybe summary of what's involved with, like, what types of things can go into the capital budget request, what is not.
Anything basically over 100, greater than 100K, 100,000, more or less infrastructure related, not vehicles and things of that nature, but something that's more permanent, I'll say. Okay.
What about things like the purchase of, like bollards and quick build materials to build out that toolkit?
That would be operational, yeah. Okay. Depending upon the volume, I mean.
If we had a stockpile of them, right, they could go in quickly and easily.
I haven't bought that many, but 100,000 should buy a lot of them.
Well, $700 a sign, I might be surprised. I guess the other thing would be design work. Would that typically be something that would fall into that? Or
unless it's related to a specific project and some sort of a capital improvement. So it's basically what it is.
Okay. Yes, my thought process here, right? We've discussed about having this quick build toolkit. John has expressed like a desire to have actual like construction detail. So the build out of that toolkit in my head might take more than 100K to do the design work, the construction, like the engineering work, plus the purchase of the materials.
I would still think that would fall under an operational budgeting process, and it would. We work on a zero-based budget, so under operations, everything starts at gets paid for.
Yep.
And then everything beyond that is expanded, so, and those are approved, those levels are approved by the commission. So I would say that would be an expanded level on current operations, but that's just my opinion. So.
Yeah. Are there other, I know we had done the sidewalk survey a few years back. Is Kelso the last of those, or were there additional
There was
sidewalks?
another
that were
one
surveyed?
that, Salem was another one that came up. A couple residents approached us on that, so
Okay.
Salem Drive was another one. And then that kind of tied into Ella and Austin, that particular area. So that whole kind of neighborhood up through there, that was another one because it ties into the school up at, is that Lincoln or Jefferson? Yeah, Jefferson, Lincoln's the other, yeah. So,
And has that survey work already been done, or is that
no,
just
it
on
has
the?
not, yeah, it has not, but this is, you know, again, there's funding that's kind of being set aside and estimated, so it's a projected budget, it's not, and the commission or the manager can make any changes to this if they like, so.
Okay, and it's also my current understanding that we are not allowed to use debt or raise taxes for street reconstruction.
Correct.
What about sidewalks? Is that a portion of, is that considered street reconstruction, or is
I
that
don't believe so.
separate?
I
Okay,
think it's separate, yeah.
okay, so we potentially could use debt to finance additional sidewalk
If it was
construction.
approved,
Right,
yeah,
right.
I'm gonna say yes, but I don't know
Okay.
for sure. so.
In theoretically,
Yeah.
yes, okay.
Whatever happened with scrub grass?
Scrubgrass, we're paving it this year and we're installing the traffic calming measures that we
Oh,
talked
okay.
about, yeah. So some of it went in.
Yeah, I
but
remember
we're
that.
paving that lower end, yeah.
Okay.
We have the speed signs
Yeah.
for those that are in. And we're gonna install the bollards or whatever they are down at the
Yeah,
bottom.
okay.
And it'll create the walking path there.
Okay, so that'll be this year.
That'll be, that's gonna be soon, very soon.
So this is just sidewalks.
That's all we had in the budget for right now. I mean,
What she just mentioned about
expansion,
scrub grass is in a different budget.
operational, right?
Operational.
Yeah, that's in operations, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is kind of looking forward, you know,
Expanding.
so.
That's more of I'm sorry, Charlotte, but that's more of an improvement down on Scrubgrass than it is.
Oh.
These are brand new sidewalks that don't
Yeah.
exist.
Okay.
So you're putting new capital in on properties that doesn't currently exist. That's an improvement on an existing piece of infrastructure. That's how I see the difference.
But if it did exceed a certain value, it would be considered a capital improvement.
It's debatable.
Public Works Director, not Finance Director. I don't know.
I think just
I built it.
from our board, it's just sidewalks have been the most expensive thing, I think.
Yeah, it's,
It really
yeah.
hasn't been.
I know from my perspective, I would definitely love to see the Salem-Ella area be dealt with. That's been high on my radar since I had to drop my son off at Jefferson on Ella. It's definitely, and watching all the high school kids walk in the middle of the street down Salem, like that is a major corridor, and I would love to see that get added. I don't know if there are others that have.
Yeah, that's my area too. I live over that way
I
and
mean, you're saying after Lakemont, I mean, Greenhurst is already a done deal for this
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
So Lakemont and then Kelso and then Salem.
So, here's my, and I've spoken to at commission and as a public commenter, I feel that our pace of sidewalk installation is too slow. And I feel like we're not spending enough on it. So I would be more aggressive, and I would look for more budget to try and do 2 of these in a year, and see how that goes, see if that's something that operationally can happen. Whether that probably wouldn't be next year, but
I mean,
the potential.
you guys are an advisory board, so you can make any recommendations you want. No, I mean,
Charlotte, do you remember, is there a reason why we would have put Lakemont before Kelso? Because I'm trying to remember, because in my mind, Kelso should be next after
that
Greenhurst.
may have been a decision that the commission made
Oh,
at one of their meetings because they wanted to tie the Greenhurst and everything else together
Yeah,
up
maybe,
to,
and then maybe that is why.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's
That
what it
does sound
was, yeah.
familiar. Okay.
It's
But
also
I'm
heavily-
Because there were
Curious.
conversations about Broadmoor,
I was just gonna ask
Yeah,
that would happen
Sleepy
to
Hollow.
Sunset Hills.
Yeah.
Sunset Hills, yeah. I mean, that was a conversation or part of a
Yeah.
discussion session,
I know.
but again, you know, if you look at your first couple of priorities, and you don't have to really lock into the other ones, you know, I mean.
Yeah.
You're just recommending an appropriation to spend money on whatever's decided at that point in time. You know, that could change year to year. Really, you really want to make sure your number one priority is whatever you want next year. And make that recommendation based on everyone's consensus of the most important thing that you're looking at.
Yeah, force rank everything.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, the commission is always balancing between lots of competing interests. And we put as much as we can toward sidewalks. But in so much as, right, there's a list, and if there were some windfall opportunity, then I think, yeah, commission would definitely be in a position to consider additional items on the list were it possible. But that's why we have the list.
And sometimes they have to fit together too. So you may, you know, when we look at streets to resurface or reconstruct streets, we're looking at longer stretches and shorter stretches, because depending upon how the bids come in, we can fit that puzzle together using different pieces, and you still need small pieces sometimes to fit together. So even with these sidewalks, if there's a small section somewhere, maybe like Andrew said, there's not enough money to do the whole street, but you know, one block or a portion of that, be able to do that too. So you have to have that mixed bag of availability with these different things too, as you're trying to put the puzzle together.
I do note that, like, a lot of the things that we've discussed are larger projects. I wonder if they're like, years ago, I made a GIS map of where our missing pieces are.
Where the what?
Where the missing sidewalks are.
Okay.
Right? At basically every street segment that doesn't have a sidewalk. I don't know if we internally have a similar map.
We have a map of everything that exists.
Right, so you
I
can
mean,
make the inverse of
yeah,
it, right?
exactly.
So I wonder if there's a way to be able to look at some of those and say, like, here are some like very small pieces that we could make connections on that would fit more like more as puzzle pieces.
Yeah, just as a spectator and sitting through the meetings and listening to the commission, listening to the advisory boards, I think the focus was on the school areas and, you know, trying to work our way from those back. So, you know, those pieces, I mean, not that they're not important either, but if you have something just hanging out in the middle somewhere for 3 or 4 houses, it doesn't connect the dots. And I think this is trying to connect the dots and tie everything together, starting with the schools and recreation center and those type of high-use facilities and those type of things, business districts, those type of things, working back from those. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
Does the municipality have right-of-way ownership at every street, like off the curb, certain amount of feet, or is it from center of?
Typical is 50 feet. The streets are typically 22 feet wide inside the curbs, and it's usually a 50-foot right-of-way. So, and those are on residential streets. When you say, does the municipality have ownership of the right-of-way, we still have state roads, you know, county roads where we do not have a right-of-way there. That's the state or county road that we're working with that.
Well, and I would add to that, right, that the municipality doesn't own the full right of way. Right. We only own a portion of that right of way. Some of that right of way is on private property. And that is typically where the sidewalks are going, is on private property, not on public right of way. So in so much as, right, you could conceptually narrow the street and put sidewalk in the public right of way, as opposed to the private right of way, it would be purely a public investment in public property. But most of our sidewalks are on the frontage component of the private property that is in the public right of way. So that's why private property owners have to contribute, because it is their property. That makes sense.
Walks. And you think about it, they cut the grass right up to the back of the curb. So, you know, the municipality doesn't come out and cut the grass.
So you're allowed, municipalities are allowed, like on Greenhurst, adding those sidewalks, I'm familiar with that area. So those homeowners have to pay
A portion of that,
a portion
10%.
of the construction,
Correct.
10% of the
The cost,
construction.
correct.
Okay.
Well, and I think more importantly, right, they have to pay a portion of it, because that's the program that we've established. The commission, by all rights, could say you are required to put a sidewalk in and it would be that simple. And they would have to pay for it and have it installed. Obviously, that is disruptive, and that is not what anybody wants to do. But again, that's where the legal right is determined. It is the public right of way, right? We have jurisdiction to make requirements of what is going on within it. But obviously, that's not necessarily neighborly to go, force, a big project down someone's throat. So that's the way the program's been established, and it evolved, and Sean was actually a big component of evolving that to make the program a little bit more clearer, to help, this process of getting sidewalks accelerated.
And there are other things in the public right of way as well. Utilities, gas lines, water lines, utility poles, wires, underground cable, a lot of other infrastructure that's there as well within that right of way.
This other funding, is that the resident funding for sidewalks? It says funded by and there's other specified, would that be?
It looks like it's 10%, so 31.5 of 315, so yeah, it looks like it's a 10% portion, correct?
So these are all our estimated costs, but do we know a final with Woodland? How much it costs?
We're close, yeah, we should be, yeah, we should have that. I don't have that available right now, but we should.
Yeah, because I mean,
But I mean, that's not apples to apples, not because, that was a very difficult install over there with all the trees, the terrain, there were some toe walls and some things that had to be put in to stabilize the slopes to make so there's no cross slope and they're ADA compliant, cross streets with ADA ramps and so forth. So it's not really apples to apples. Like Greenhurst is gonna be a lot easier this year, knock on wood, hopefully, than Woodland was last year, because there's a lot less obstructions, there aren't as many trees, roots, things like that, so.
If I remember, that quote came in under what we had budgeted for it, is that correct?
Greenhurst?
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I mean, originally it was at like 137.
Well, you're basing it on,
I mean, that's years ago.
the prices
yeah.
fluctuate, and, it depends on when you go out to bid,
Yeah, but compared to
favorable bids.
Woodland at the time, that was like 460, so it's a
Right,
big difference.
Right, and,
Lot
well,
longer.
Woodland was a lot longer
Lot
too, I
longer,
mean,
yeah.
that was a significant piece of
Yeah, almost
sidewalk.
double a
Yeah,
Greenhurst, yeah.
exactly. And, again, the engineer's doing his best to give a opinion of cost based on current. You do it now versus 6 months ago with fuel costs and everything else, I mean.
I wanted to let these guys know like where these numbers come from.
Yeah.
They're kind of, but, and that was a factor too, right, Sean, that we considered, but these were just the numbers given to us, so that's what we had to go on, but it'll be good to have the data for the actual ones.
For sure.
So,
And those are used every year to update, it's lessons learned every project that we do with the engineer, using that moving forward. But again, you can't control pricing and those type of things. There's a lot of variables that go into bidding.
Yeah, Bob.
This may not be the right place in the conversation, but I'm curious to know, how does something that is a monstrous kind of thing like the South Garage replacement fit in the capital budget discussion?
Yes.
I guess it doesn't.
Well,
Okay.
no, it does. It does. I mean, and it's been on the CIP program for a long time, right? We've all known it was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been creeping its way along back there because we've all been aware, right? Well, I'll put it this way. I was on the parking board back in 2013 and we were starting to talk about it then.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, in so much as, right, it's been a planning exercise, right? There's always that line of sight on major capital infrastructure funding that we know is coming, and especially when it comes to Ian and Andrew. So Ian, the planner, and Andrew, the finance director, are preparing for that eventuality of we are going to need to fund a major infrastructure project and then coordinate that project. They are planning that in the context of what kind of capacity do we have to borrow? What kind of capacity do we have to pay GoFund? And how are we lining up those resources ahead of time, knowing that a major spend is coming? At that point, and what should that point be, given when we will have capacity?
Yeah, it is coming sooner than 2013, looking ahead. It's a couple years away, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right, so I guess my question, so we have our current recommendation for 27 is Lakemont, 28 is Kelso, 27, I don't think we're gonna change that in any way. I think that was the recommendation that the commission wanted to go with. My question for you all is, do we still feel Kelso is our top choice? Where would we rank Salem? The Salem, potentially Salem-Ella project compared to that, and there were some others you mentioned over in Sunset Hills. So I don't want to leave out areas, like I'm obviously familiar with where I live, but there are potential areas that aren't seen here that should be represented, and we would need to look at those. So are there any of those that have come up that?
I think that pretty much covers the public comment that we've had over the last couple of years, folks coming in
Yeah.
and with concerns about areas for pedestrians.
Sleepy Hollow Road, maybe that's the only other one, but that was
Yeah,
a
but
tricky one.
Yeah, and there wasn't really a lot, Country Club would probably be more trickier than Sleepy Hollow.
Right.
Just with the big trees and everything along there, it's real difficult, but, yeah, a lot of this was initiated by public comment and folks coming in, calling, sending emails.
Yeah, we definitely talked about Salem before. To Rudy's point, the squeaky wheel was always Kelso, and you've been there. It's
It's a higher
it's a
speed road.
tricky road, so no doubt. And then with Ella, I know I made a recommendation, that's not here, but we talked about an alternative, like, do we have to think about sidewalks for every answer?
Right.
Salem, that kind of snuck in here. I don't really remember citizens' comments, but all of a sudden there was all
I
this
think
hot.
it was an
but-
email or something.
Oh,
that
was
came
it?
in.
Yeah, maybe a petition.
Kind of extended or expanded from the crosswalk that we put in down at.
Right.
Cedar,
Makes sense.
Salem and
I'm not
Holycross.
really opposed. I'm just still, in my opinion, putting Kelso above that, but that's
Yeah.
just how.
We may
my-
have a petition from Salem in the
think we
folder
do.
too, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's stuff from the citizens on Ella as well, so
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
not that they're not valid, but we need, to Andrews says a lot, think outside of sidewalks. And, yeah, but
Yeah,
But
I
for-
think Kelso should be.
budget purposes and looking 29, 30, maybe we just put those on there. I don't know if that's what we're hoping to get out of, the next 5 years.
I think the critical thing, once you get past like the second year, is really the funding's there, you're recommending spending the money to the commission. If you want to get specific, fine. If not, it's still, hey, we know we need to do something, and here's what we're asking for to make that happen. So,
But going back to Kelso, we did motion last month, Rudy, to have the costs reevaluated. So I don't know, that's not capital budget, but to have
For
that
Kelso?
handled. Yeah,
I think that would be more the split between the municipal share and the homeowner share.
Right.
Rather than necessarily the total cost.
yeah. So we,
yeah, we turned it, Mickey, didn't we turn that in? Did we put that on the thing to the manager? To have reevaluated Kelso based on current pricing versus what was done before. We'll have to look and see. I'm pretty sure we did, but,
Okay.
Yeah, but one other thing that I want to throw out there that just hit me as you guys were talking is that the capital project budget is going to experience some challenges over the next couple of years, and Rudy will know exactly why the minute I say it. The stormwater fee is no longer legally allowed as it is currently structured. That was a judgment from the Supreme Court. I won't go into specifics. I don't recall them all. But suffice it to say that we have a hole in the budget, and sewer is going to need to get a refocus in terms of how we fund the stormwater and sewer system because the fee structure was deemed to be inappropriate. That is going to necessitate some discussions about how we fund, those types of infrastructure upgrades. I suspect that the dialogue will ultimately be that it will be a millage discussion. But in so much as that is the case, that will place pressure on the municipality and all members, who are voting on topics related to capital projects, on how much do we raise taxes to sustain and build out additional capacity. My personal opinion is that we need to be making these investments. And while it's great to just diversify away from general millage, and we can do things like, earned income tax as a differentiator, but it all still comes, and we have to be thoughtful about the fact that, that is going to be a pressure that is going to be coming. And so in so much as people who are interested in improving the mobility infrastructure of the municipality are asking for capital investments, we are going to have more competition for those dollars. So we need to be thinking about that as we go down this journey as well. So just not to discourage, but I think it's important to put it in context that that the funding environment is changing, and we need to build support for how we convince our fellow neighbors to spend their personal dollars on making improvements, because that's what we're talking about.
Bob, I know you had your hand up, but I had a related question to the stormwater, Andrew. I know we're under the consent decree. What % completion would you say we are on that? Like, how far along in that process are we? And when that completes, does that obviate the need for
Consent order, I'm
Oh,
sorry,
of course not.
sanitary, that's
Okay.
completely different.
Okay.
Yeah, of course not. Honestly, I mean, Sean, my take is that these are long overdue investments. Mount Lebanon is well ahead of the vast majority of municipalities, but there is always going to be, that need to continue those investments. So I don't think this is and it will be done by this point type of discussion. I think it is a big, again, Rudy is far closer to this than I am, but my instinct is that the minute we are done lining sewers the first round, Rudy's going to be like, okay, now back to the other end of the line, and we're going to start again. And that is the right answer. And if anybody is telling you otherwise, they're probably shortchanging the need.
Okay, so it's painting the Golden Gate Bridge. It's not building it in the first place.
Right.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, Charlotte and Rudy, I know that you were there when there was a citizen comment from Gilkison. It was an impassioned plea about the difficulty of crossing and the number of homes there, but I don't remember if there was anything specific, which is my guess why it wouldn't be part of the capital budget, sidewalks and crosswalks. Do you guys remember any of that?
I mean, I just could tell you that Gilkison is a real difficult situation there. You have state highway, 4 lanes, 5 in some places with turning lanes at Old Gilkison. Guardrails right at the top of the slope, so you have a slope. Beyond that, where do you put a sidewalk? It would have to be a suspension bridge along there somewhere to even have a sidewalk. So
Actually, I've walked through there not too long ago, and it reminds me a lot of the work they did in Upper St. Clair in the park that built that trail that goes, because they basically built retaining wall along the side of it to build. That's what it reminded me of, and not nearly as tall as what they built out there.
Well, but it's a state highway too, so it's not our road to make that decision. So PennDOT would have to, number one, approve it.
Yeah, I was just going back through my mind on some of the citizens' comments, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't forget about that.
she had a point and she was passionate about it, but I didn't hear it as part of this discussion. So
We did, before Seth left, we did recommend somehow through red tape that the state look at the concerns.
yeah.
there's to be a
Yeah, the
reevaluation.
request was made by the manager to
Yeah.
PennDOT, so.
So that's been a while, but, you know,
Yeah. So there's nothing at capital, there's nothing that's structured that could be a capital request, right?
Just doing that.
Okay.
yeah, we never really touched it, to
Right.
be honest. I mean, just how could, yeah, so.
Right. That answers my question. Thank you.
Sad thing is, we're probably likely losing my bus route 36 because there's no safe place to have a bus stop on Gilkison. So it's not gonna go to the village anymore. So, and part of that, Seth was explaining, if a citizen calls and says, there's no safe place for me to stand on Gilkison, Port Authority will just say, well, and I'm just removing the bus stop. That's their answer,
Wow.
instead of trying to work with us, you know, so.
Yes.
It's, yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, losing that route is a blow.
Yeah, it is.
So based on what Andrew said, is that not more reason to make Kelso a higher priority? To try to get it done as soon as possible
Given
too?
the,
Rather than, if we're gonna start to lose dollars year after year, it'll just get pushed out farther and farther. And I only say that because we literally had residents in here for an entire year, every month,
Yeah.
like asking for help on Kelso. And all we could, we can't do much because it's a state road, so we painted some crosswalks and cleaned up some signs, but, I feel like that's the only other thing we can do for them.
yeah.
So we are able to construct sidewalk there?
Yes.
Okay. And how does that differ from Gilkison then, since that's also state?
I'm just, from a structure standpoint, I mean, looking at the terrain and so forth,
But like, from a ownership perspective?
I don't think it does differ. I mean,
Okay. Well,
PennDOT did look at Kelso at one point. And they made the recommendations with the speed limits and the signage upgrades and the crosswalk, so, and those were implemented. Those improvements were done by us.
So I think they
Gilkison next to a creek, you would, there isn't physically space to build the sidewalk unless you're willing to do a road diet.
PennDOT's not. PennDOT's anyway.
So we still, I think the general consensus is Kelso is still the top item here. So my questions for you, do we add Salem as a capital request? Do we look at a quick build option for Salem that could become a capital request? That actually would be my preference, is that we do something in the shorter term and then potentially make it a physical hard sidewalk in the future.
Yeah, I'm on board with that, Sean.
Okay.
I agree with you.
I'm very familiar with Salem. I'm not familiar with what the proposed project is, though. Is it sidewalk from Cedar all the way up to Bower Hill?
I assume so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to make sense, particularly at the Cedar intersection. It's always very confusing to me why there was never a sidewalk there. You have this grand boulevard kind of vehicle space, but no pedestrian space. It's confusing.
Yeah, that's also the kind of space that, to me, like, that road is very, very, very wide. And that's the kind of space that I think taking it out of the road rather than out of residents' front yards would be the better way to go. It would slow traffic down and basically reduce the cart pathway to be smaller. And that's something that we could do with a roll of road bollards, some paint, whatever it might be in the short term, and then see if that actually helps. Do a traffic study before, do a traffic study after, see if we've made improvement on it, and let that recommend, oh yeah, this is actually working. Let's
Because
move
there's
forward.
no lines on that road, right? I
No.
mean, even just painting lines would make it look a little more, sorry, Rudy. I saw that side eye.
Side eye you.
Okay. My other question, this is my own personal thing, but I would love to see us try to do more faster, right? And I know we just got there will be limited budget, and we have budget what there is, but my personal gut feeling is we are not moving fast enough on sidewalk installation. It was the top thing that came up in the comprehensive plan survey, right? Walkability is the number one thing, and we're spending $500,000 maybe a year on it. I am obviously not an elected. I personally would be happy to pay more in tax for it. That's my personal opinion. I know that is, our current millage system is a mess. I would love to see that get fixed. That's a county problem, not our problem. It's our problem, but it's the county's mess to fix. So, I mean, my personal pitch is I would love to see Kelso moved up and put Salem in behind it, with potential for quick build on Salem in the interim. That, I don't think the quick build would be a capital project. I think that would be something less than, but I don't know, what do people think about that? I want to be aggressive here, but that's me.
I mean, could we have the engineer look at Salem like they did with Scrubgrass and come up with different ideas and options of, you know?
You'd have to make a recommendation, and I'd carry that to the manager, and he'd make the determination on whether to do that or not.
Like, I don't know if that's, because to your point, some short-term, I think that's what they did with Scrubgrass, right? Is like, they had these options of like, this would be permanent, this would be temporary, we could do this or that.
Well, this, just on Salem, yeah, they actually asked for traffic calming. That was the petition that they completed. And we suggested that we hold it until the active transportation plan was in place. And possibly used as part of the active transportation process, which obviously didn't play out. So in so much as, the manager is aware, right? This was a discussion that he and I had. If that were a proposal that came from this board, all right, to look at that and traffic calming under the kind of aegis of the thinking under the active transportation plan for Salem, and the traffic engineer to look at it and make recommendations, I think that at least is not a new topic to the manager. Whether there is capacity for that, I'm not sure.
Did they meet the requirements did they do the study and meet the requirements for traffic calming?
I believe we did study the traffic counts and the speed, but I don't think it met the current, it didn't meet the threshold for the current.
Okay. Just curious.
If I'm remembering correctly, but I think, I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that.
So I'm looking through my emails and I'm seeing mention of a resident request, but did they ever actually even get to the step of did Salem go through the sidewalk expansion policy process, which I'm not very familiar with?
No, I think they did traffic calming. I don't think
There's a traffic
Never
calming.
a traffic.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the first step of that is for the manager to approve doing traffic counts and speeds, average speeds, 85th percentile.
Oh, and again, for me, it goes back to does Salem make sense to have sidewalks? I don't know, right? It's a wide street, right? There are other things we could do with it, in my mind, rather than just put sidewalks on and make the raceway, that much more viable for drivers. Right. That's why I had initially thought of it as an opportunity to engage in the active transportation planning framework, because it seems like an ideal opportunity to kind of step back and go, well, wait a minute, do we just put in speed bumps and sidewalks, or do we actively think about that space and understand its uses and what's possible there, rather than just, hey, go put in sidewalks, because that really only encourages, a separation, which might not be appropriate.
I definitely agree with that. My reluctance to not also request it in the capital budget is if we do go that way and it does work out and we end up wanting sidewalks there, if we don't request it now, we wait a whole year for it to get on. I mean, I don't think we would be requesting it for this coming year, so it may be a moot point, but that's my hesitation.
My thought is you're requesting funding, not, now you're trying to get specific, but you want funding set aside for something, whether it's that or putting sidewalks in or whatever, building a bridge, whatever it is, you're requesting funding to be appropriated or set aside for particular use. That's just my thought.
I would agree with Rudy on that, right? Obviously, there are priorities, but your key goal is we want financial capacity dedicated to these types of initiatives.
Yep.
And here's what we think of as what we would like to see first, but recognizing that there's flexibility there.
And from a mobility standpoint, this is pretty much the only capital dollars we have, which ends up being sidewalks, right?
Well, when you say what we have, I mean, you're advising and requesting that the municipality, the commission, and the manager do something, so.
I'm just saying, but like.
This is the only thing that we
It's about
have, and
$500,000,
this is,
yeah.
that's in the budget
Yeah, okay.
currently.
Well, I mean, I would agree with Rudy, but I would also say that there is a $3 million road budget that is tied to mobility.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, that is, already pre-imagined, but that is under the aegis of the mobility board. And you guys have every right to have an opinion on how much we're spending on asphalt.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
What about street reconstruction? Is that under capital?
Yep. Resurfacing, repaving, curbs, sidewalk. Guys, if it's in the right of way and it involves movement, you get to have an opinion.
Just resurfacing curbs, sidewalk damage, sidewalk assessment, that's all under operating, so not capital.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
So that's basically considered maintenance.
Do you know,
Correct,
do
Ellen?
you happen to know off the top of your head what the reconstruction ask is for?
$2.2 million it was for this year, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was 27.
It's typically been right around 2.2 for reconstruction.
And that,
And-
how many roads does that take? It was 8 this year-ish?
Depends on the bid, yeah, it depends on, when you say how
Size
many
of road.
roads.
Yeah.
If you have 4 sections, 500 feet long, or 3 that are 1,200 feet long, it just depends on what sections we're doing.
And the utilities, right? What the utilities are doing too.
It doesn't have any impact on us, no.
No?
No, I mean, they redo their utilities, but that's part of the process.
Yeah, don't we try to partner with them and?
If we can,
Yeah.
yeah, so that does make the dollars go a little further, right? Correct.
I guess, what are your triggers typically for a reconstruction project?
Conditions, poor drainage, we can resurface a road if it has good drainage and good base stability. If the drainage is shot, then we have to dig it up and put new drainage in, and that's typically what that trigger is for that.
Okay.
So it's really a condition. It's we just rated the streets again. We're using a different software now with iPhones on the hood where we drive around, and it's a 0 to 100 scale. So from 100 down to usually, I think it's 65 or 70, Andrew, something of that nature.
Yeah, I think
Triggers resurfacing.
65, yeah.
Yeah, and then once we get below about 50, 45 or 50, then it's considered reconstruction.
Okay.
And it depends on the deficiencies and the defects. If you have alligator cracking and some other different defects that indicate there's structural issues with the entire street or drainage issues, then you have to correct that or you're not gonna get the life out of the street. Because when we reconstruct the street, we anticipate getting about 20 to 25 year lifespan out of that. And then we just mill and overlay the surface off and put a new surface on. It's a less costly way of maintaining the street. And then we should get probably, depending upon where it's at, shade, those type of things, traffic volumes, another 15 to 18 years out of that resurfacing. So.
If you looked into your magic ball, what, magic 8 ball, I guess? No, that's not it. Crystal ball, that's the word I'm looking for. In the next, I mean, it's obviously hard to say, like, conditions change, but like, are there known roads that are coming up on your radar that?
Oh, sure.
like,
Yeah, and that's our plan, is to project our next 5 years of what we will need to reconstruct and resurface. and present that to the board.
Okay,
Salem feels like it's getting close to that. That could kind of couple into what Andrew was saying about making it a bigger project and reevaluating it and kind of tying that all together with the ATP.
I think that would be slightly different because we're looking at like the process rather than like that wouldn't be necessarily a reconstruction. I think the state of that road is pretty good. Like that, the road itself is.
The base, I just know the defects don't indicate that there's structural issues with it, if that makes sense.
So like a wholesale reconstruction probably wouldn't be the initial step there.
Yeah, the defects are typically alligator cracking, rutting, shoving of the asphalt, those type of things. That indicates that the subbase is soft or moving around and that needs to be addressed.
So, yeah.
So is the upcoming budget too soon for a realistic capital outlay as a direct result of the active transportation plan? As far as getting that, the results of that spun up? Because like would there, like we're talking about specific streets here, but would there be anything stopping us from just saying, hey, we would request a pot of money for capital outlay in response to the active transportation plan?
I think that's a reasonable point. Yeah.
Because I do think that I do look at Salem and I was like, man, this I wish some things were different about that street, but I don't. Instead of like committing to a specific street, just say like, hey, we think we're going to be doing something with this plan. We don't know. Does it need to be assigned to a street?
So I mean, I would look at it this way: like this is a 5-year projection, right? Certainly within 5 years, I think there should be active transportation dollars allocated for some of the projects that are going to be spun out of that, right? Do we know what they are yet? Do we have a priority of them? Not yet. So for this next year, I can't imagine that there's anything that the ATP will kick up that quickly other than quick build style things, which I don't think we'd classify as capital projects, at least in their initial phases, right? They're the quick build stuff. They'd be low cost, right? That's the whole point, is to make them low cost. But 2028, 2029, 2030, I definitely think that there's a need to ask for active transportation money or a reallocation of how we're spending for those things. So, and that's
Let me ask this, Rudy. If we went through this exercise and said, look, we quote unquote the mobility board, we are asking commission to dedicate a certain amount of funding to support active transportation implementation or design and implementation programming on an ongoing basis. Now, the way I would frame that is, money for analysis, right? So again, whatever the design process exercise is that we go through for projects that are reconstruction that aren't going to happen next year, but we want to have some resourcing for that to help us move through that exercise, right? And do the coordination and discussions and planning for reimagined reconstructions, but then also money for the tactical implementations, right? The things that Sean's talking about. Would that make sense to you as a kind of a unified bucket of money? I don't know where that would sit, but.
So here's what I would say to that. So everything that we've done, we sat down 20, 25 years ago and made a determination that we want to maintain our streets at a certain level, a condition level, let's say 67, I think it was, or something, that with that 0 to 100 rating.
Right.
We basically have run our program over the last 20 to 25 years to keep within that goal. And we have a couple programs. The major parts of that program are the reconstruction, which we've been spending $2 to $2.2 million per year to reconstruct streets that are structurally deficient, and the resurfacing program, which has fluctuated and varied depending upon available funding for that, anywhere from 300,000 to probably 600,000-700,000. Our plan was with the engineers over this period of time to basically get all the streets reconstructed that need to be reconstructed and flip that to spending more of those dollars on resurfacing. And that was a comprehensive plan that took into consideration what the condition of the streets were at the time and what we wanted to maintain over time and improve the condition of the streets. So I guess the short answer to your question is, from my perspective, I would think we continue to spend the same amount of dollars. If we want to do something else, we have to fund additional dollars up above and beyond that to implement those other things.
Yeah, well, no, and that's honestly,
Maintain the
and
same
I'm with you.
level of
100%. Right. My opinion is that the surface management program is exceptionally robust, and we don't want to lose that. Right. If I put in a bike lane, I frankly want an even better surface than I do for a car. So that's not. Yeah, that's table stakes in my opinion. What I'm thinking about is that next, the reimagining component of this. Right. It's not going to be 22 feet of asphalt anymore. Or maybe it's not. We don't know, because we need to facilitate that conversation. And we also need a bucket of money for, the flex posts and the paint and the time and the energy to go and do those short-term projects that are above and beyond what's there today. It's that exercise that I'm curious if we want to try to ask that as a bucket of funds to support active transportation implementation and transitions on an ongoing basis. That make sense?
I mean, it's above and beyond what we do now, so I would say it's, that's another level of funding, in my opinion. I mean, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
It would be an expanded level because it's something we're not spending money on right now. So we would request additional spending, additional funding to make that happen, which we kind of did last year with the $30,000 that was appropriated, and then we carried a portion of that over that we didn't spend from the last budget year.
But you think that's operational though, not?
Yeah, and that's more like a contingency fund than it is a specific fund, to buy a truck or to buy a shovel or whatever it might be. That's money appropriated to do certain things. What those certain things are, you determine as you go along. So.
Some of that for council.
Yeah, well, and I think that's, as we're having this conversation, it's becoming apparent to me that we probably, the active transportation plan is going to require funding above and beyond where it is today, right? If we as a community want to implement it, it is going to require dollars that are not in the budget right now. And that needs to be called out as whether it's a new service level or it is, whatever it is, but that needs to be defined. Otherwise, it's never going to be part of the conversation, and the active transportation plan is going to sit there, right? And we're going to talk about it, but we're never going to really have the institutional capacity to move it structurally.
Sorry, Bob, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to the resolution we talked about earlier, and section 12 says budget and capital program.
Yep.
Not less than 15% of municipal's annual transportation shall be programmed toward eligible active transportation and safety initiatives. Are we not talking about that?
Yeah. So, I mean,
So we do have something in the resolution, and then it goes on further. It says 2/3 of the amount should go to the maximum extent practical to priority networks and quick build projects or construction.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this, at least in the resolution, it's there.
Yeah. So my back of the envelope math, depending on what projects were included, that washed out to around between $300,000 and $500,000. Is about 15%. That was some things it was unclear whether it was part part of that bucket or not, because it's spread kind of all over the place.
I guess the thing that I wanted to emphasize, the reason I told the long story before, was that anything that you do to take away the money that we're doing, with the projects we're doing now, and that is gonna have an impact on the condition of the streets overall. And it will be a negative impact. So I just wanna make sure that, that's my point, what I was trying to make.
Yeah, and I don't think necessarily, so I wouldn't say that it, like, my push would be, rather than like lopping off 15% of what is currently there, we ask for the increase such that 15% gets us to that $300,000 to $500,000. So.
And then there's gonna be some maintenance on top of that too. I mean, things get knocked down, things get, so, that's gonna create an additional potential cost on the other side of that. If you put things in, they get broken, they get run over, they get, accidents happen.
Here's my sales pitch. It is getting close to 7:30. My sales pitch, given that $300,000, $500,000 that would be the 15%, how would people feel about asking for that $500,000? Like, aim high, get talked down is always my my tactic, right? So Kelso is listed there at 500,000, right? If we push that up to 2027, which we feel that road is our number one priority, we move that 500,000 up, and then backfill years, we look at more of $1 million for, now this is technically in sidewalk right now, but that would cover active transportation capital projects for the following years. Does that make sense to folks? Like, that would be, we have basically the cost for a big sidewalk project, and then potentially a second big sidewalk project, or a bunch of active transportation projects with that funding that roughly shakes, if my math was right, between $300,000 and $500,000. That would be the 15% that we're asking for the active transportation budgeting. Does that make sense to folks?
So you'd have it basically as another line item under capital costs, like, as like a placeholder for general ATV stuff, or you want to increase the numbers that are there to account for it? Just curious what you're.
I'm looking more at the bottom, because it's listed out by street at the bottom.
Is this a different way of saying it, right? That in the year 29 and 30, we don't call this the sidewalk improvement plan, we call this the ATP implementation money? Is that
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's some of the solution might be putting sidewalks in some of these places.
Right. I mean, yeah, it can, if we need to rename it, I don't know what act of God that would take to.
Well, yeah,
change it from
but
sidewalk
effectively,
improvement
it's this pot of money that would be going to the ATP plan.
Capital mobility projects, right? Yeah, and how that is broken down, right? I'm not the numbers man, right? That's someone else who breaks down how we account for it, but.
So you're saying increase 2027 ask to 991,000 and pull those two streets together?
Yeah.
As a recommendation, as a number one recommendation of the mobility board.
We can vote on that if we.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this at the subcommittee meeting that we had the other night. I don't want just like token yeses. I don't want to pressure people into yeses. If people are actually opposed, I want you to speak up and say that I'm opposed to this. So if anyone is uncomfortable with that, definitely say so. Right?
Well, and guys, as I think about this, right, this is complicated, and it does come down to dollars and cents, right? That's the reality. And I think you would get a lot of pushback, right, to Rudy's point, that if we said, well, we're going to deteriorate the quality of our streets, right, to prioritize other modes of mobility, because we are working hard, and we have nice streets, right, and that is important. It is part of this. How do we understand this additional capacity need? And again, I go back to, if Andrew McCreary needs to keep track of the sidewalk fund separately, that's nice. That's not how we need to think about it necessarily, right? We can slice these things in different ways to understand the structural objectives of the community. And how do we think about creating that next service tier bucket, I think is, Rudy's kind of called out a mechanism that we use in our budgeting process every year is service levels, right? And, there are these service levels of, essentially the bare minimum, certain levels, and then what we do today, and then maybe one or two tiers above that are aspirational, that, hey, if we could do X, this is how much it would cost. I think we probably want to be thinking about this in the context of a service level discussion. Because ultimately, right, it's about building that kind of institutional process that sustains the funding long term, rather than one-off exercises, right? Once it gets to, the funding buckets that Rudy needs it to be in to go execute projects, good, go do it, Rudy, be excellent, right? And I want us, and I personally want to stay out of Rudy's way, because Rudy is far better at this than any of us are. So, but before it gets to that point, how are we thinking about what we want the street to be, where we want the sidewalks, and what that planning exercise is? That, I think, is something that we need to be funding and we haven't funded up to this point. So how do we think about it that way? And think about what these buckets are, because again, I think to the point that was made earlier, we have a sidewalk bucket, we have a street bucket, we have curb bucket, right? We've got lots of these little buckets, and they're all in their own little spot, and that's fine from an accounting perspective, but that doesn't necessarily help us from a strategic thinking perspective.
What do you need from us in 2 months? Do you want this decision?
Yeah, I mean, what the priorities are, number one, and
Well, I
how we
think
structure it.
I think we decided on priorities, now being Kelso maybe 27, but we've said it several times, so if you count on a heat chart, we've said it a bunch of times. But, I don't know.
I guess my question is, do we feel comfortable asking for more to be able to do 2 sidewalks a year instead of 1?
They can always change it.
Yeah.
So to me, ask for it, and they can always bump it back to where it was, and I mean, that happens. And
Yeah, sure.
everybody's.
And I think to your point and Andrew's point about service levels, right? How we, that's the more the operating budget, not the capital budget.
Yeah.
I think that's
We're
where
not-
some of the active
we haven't
transportation
started
stuff.
that yet.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of where the active transportation stuff is going.
At
to be
least
funded
initially,
from.
anyway. Yeah, unless you get a big project or something that, goes beyond that $100,000 and it's a capital project.
And I think if we are aiming now for looking at $1 million a year for sidewalks, quote unquote sidewalks, right? And we have nothing listed for potential projects now. If we move Kelso up 2028, 2029, 2030, those are empty with roughly $1 million. We could look at using that capital money for a larger active transportation project down the line, a sidewalk and whatever it might be. That would be does anybody disagree, I guess?
Makes sense to me. Yeah, I support that.
Makes sense to me, along with maintaining Rudy's need for that continuing service of our streets.
My bicycle thanks you. I like our roads.
I always wish they were better, to be honest with you. I love to pave. I do.
All right, do you need a formal?
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
yeah, you should structure it somehow so I can.
Okay, yes,
Right.
so I'll make a resolution, I'll put forward a resolution that the ask for 2027's capital budget will be $991,000 with the tentative projects being Lakeland Drive and Kelso Road sidewalks. And moving forward, years 2028, 29, and 2030, an even $1 million for sidewalk / active transportation capital projects.
For each year, for 28, 29, and 30.
Yeah. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, that was a lot. I appreciate all of your comments and hard work on that. All right, item 9, announcement of next meeting date and time.
Oh,
Next-
wait, Sean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We had a document called South Garage Replacement Brainstorm. Is that?
Oh, yes. Let me check my email. I think I sent it on to Ian. I believe I sent it on to Ian after our last meeting.
Okay.
Since it wasn't a formal thing, so I just sent him our thoughts about it. I believe I did that, but I will confirm.
Okay. But, and I also wanted to let the mobility board know that there is a letter that's going to be coming to each of the boards, as well as each of the commissioners, from the Washington Square Condominium Unit Owners Association. So just concerns and interests. So it's coming out.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Sorry, I should ask any other new business.
I mean, I have a comment about this budget discussion. So I feel like a lot of this discussion was centered around like public works and the underlying, and like Rudy was mentioning, like if we just take the money from somewhere else within public works, like the quality of the roads will suffer. So the assumption is on the other side of that, if the money comes from somewhere else, either some other service will suffer or our taxes will go up. So I do want to like mention that like as residents, like the public works window is like very narrow scope of life in the community. And like I guess I think that the long-term goal is that after a couple of decades of doing this, like eventually you will have lower emergency services expenses, because a huge part of what that money goes toward is cleaning up all the car crashes. And something that like residents' time and energy is something that doesn't show up on the municipal spreadsheets. But like if you have some more moms that are comfortable letting their kids walk to school instead of sitting in their car for 30 minutes in front of the school, then that is value to the community. So it's not a zero-sum game, as it were. That's all.
Agree with you. All right, the announcement of next meeting date and time. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Mount Lebanon Mobility and Transportation Board is Tuesday, July 7th, 2026 at 6 p.m. All municipal meetings have a Zoom webinar component to enable residents to attend meetings virtually. That was it. Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Second. Bob seconds. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Okay,
night.
thank you.
John, Karen, do we want to try to schedule that?